Why leaders must lie, Machiavelli's rule of power. What if I told you that every great leader you admire has lied to you? Not once, not as a mistake, but deliberately and necessarily. And what if I told you that this lie, this deliberate distortion of truth, wasn't a sign of weakness or corruption, but a condition of power itself? The video you're watching right now isn't just about leadership or deception. It's about the strange, uncomfortable truth that sometimes truth is not enough. That the raw, unfiltered honesty we crave from our leaders is often the very thing that would destroy them and us. I'm going to take you on a journey through the mind of one of the most controversial thinkers in history, Niccolo Machiavelli. He's the man who dared to say what others only whispered, that a good ruler must not only act virtuously, but appear virtuous, that the illusion of goodness may be more important than goodness itself. And that lies, yes, lies are tools of survival, strategy, and ultimately peace. But before you recoil, ask yourself, have you ever told a lie to protect someone? Have you ever hidden the truth because revealing it would have caused more harm than good? Then consider this: if we as ordinary people do this in our personal lives, why do we expect leaders who carry the weight of entire nations to operate under a stricter moral code? Now, let's start with the fundamental paradox. We want our leaders to be honest, but we punish them when their honesty reveals uncomfortable realities. We say we want transparency, but when a leader admits weakness, fear, or uncertainty, we lose faith. We want courage, but only the kind that reassures us. We want truth, but only when it flatters our values. And so, without realizing it, we create a system where the lie becomes a necessity, not a choice.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
Machiavelli understood the theater of politics. He knew that power is perception, and perception is rarely built on pure truth. The people, the masses, as he called them, are driven by appearances. They don't see into the heart of the prince, they see the stage. And on that stage, what matters is not the leader's internal virtue, but the image of strength, the illusion of certainty, the performance of control. If the truth threatens that image, then the truth must be sacrificed, not out of cruelty, but out of preservation. Here's a question I want you to sit with for a moment. Is it more ethical to tell a comforting lie that prevents chaos, or a brutal truth that incites panic? Imagine a leader who discovers that the economy is on the verge of collapse. If he announces it, the markets crash, thousands lose their jobs overnight, and violence erupts. If he lies temporarily, he buys time to fix it from within. Which would you choose? And more importantly, why? This isn't just about government or politics. This is about life. Every relationship, every social structure, every human interaction is built on a delicate balance of truth and deception. We lie to keep peace. We lie to avoid pain. Sometimes we lie because we don't yet know how to tell the truth. And sometimes we lie because the world is not ready to hear what we have to say. Machiavelli didn't celebrate lies for their own sake. He understood them as instruments of power, wielded not recklessly, but wisely. He believed that a skilled leader must learn to simulate virtue while being prepared to act against it when necessary. That's the hard truth. If leaders acted only with pure goodness, they would be destroyed by those who do not. In a world where wolves roam freely, the lamb who speaks only truth is devoured. But what does this mean for us? Are we justifying moral compromise? Are we saying that ends justify means? Not exactly. What we're saying is that morality in leadership is not the same as morality in private life. A parent lies to a child about the monster under the bed to help them sleep. But a doctor withholds a terminal diagnosis to give a patient one last week of peace. Are these immoral acts or acts of mercy? Let's also not mistake lies for evil. There are lies born from greed and oppression, yes, but there are also lies born from wisdom, from the painful recognition that some truths, when spoken too early or too bluntly, do not liberate, they destroy. A leader must walk this razor's edge every day. And the ones who fail are often the ones who refused to lie when it mattered most. Now, think of the leaders you admire. Were they perfect? Were they always honest? Or did they master the art of appearing just, even when their choices were hard and morally complex? We love the myth of the flawless leader, but history shows us something else. We remember the ones who made difficult decisions, some of which they never fully explained. And sometimes that silence, that omission, was the very thing that held everything together. I want to leave you with this. If truth is a blade, then power is knowing when to sheath it. And if you were in command, if the fate of millions rested on your voice, would you speak the whole truth, knowing it might cost everything? Or would you lie just once to save them? The anatomy of power, how deception builds empires. Power is not built on truth. That's a hard reality to accept, and yet history tells us it is so. If we peel back the curtain of every empire, every revolution, every golden age of civilization, what we find is not just courage and vision, but also manipulation, concealment, and strategic misdirection. The architects of empires were not saints, they were tacticians. They understood that to lead people, you must first understand them deeply, not as they wish to be, but as they are. And that understanding reveals a truth that's almost too uncomfortable to admit. People don't follow truth, they follow belief. And belief is shaped more by perception than by reality. But let's go deeper. At the core of power lies the ability to shape perception. To lead, you must not only act, you must also craft the narrative around your actions. Machiavelli knew this when he said that it is more important for a leader to be seen as virtuous than to be virtuous. It's not hypocrisy, it's strategy, because the people do not see into your heart. They see what you show them. And if what you show them gives them hope, stability, and direction, then the illusion becomes more powerful than the truth itself. We like to think that great movements are born from pure ideals. But ideals are only the spark. What turns a spark into a fire is the story that surrounds it, the myth, the symbol, the carefully constructed legend. Think of how revolutions begin. The slogans, the heroes, the enemies, all of these are crafted to mobilize people, to give them a sense of purpose. But are they always accurate? Are they always fair? Rarely. But they are effective. And in the realm of power, effectiveness often takes precedence. Now, you might be wondering, does this mean all power is corrupt? Not necessarily. Power is a tool. It can be used to build or to destroy. But the acquisition of power often requires navigating through a world where truth is not the currency. Influence is. And influence is won not by being truthful, but by being believed. That is the crucial distinction. The leader who can shape belief, who can craft a narrative that aligns with people's fears and hopes, gains more control than the one who simply states facts. Ask yourself this: if you were building a movement, trying to unite people across different backgrounds, fears, and desires, would you rely on the cold, hard, often divisive truth? Or would you craft a message that resonates, even if it simplifies or distorts? Would you tell them exactly how difficult the road ahead is, or would you promise a better future and figure out the details later? Before you answer, remember many of the greatest causes in history were carried on the back of such promises. But let's look at some real-world examples. Abraham Lincoln suspended habeas corpus during the Civil War to preserve the Union, a decision many considered unconstitutional. Winston Churchill concealed the full scale of early losses during World War II to maintain morale. These were not acts of transparent honesty. They were deliberate, strategic deceptions. Yet we remember these men not as liars, but as heroes. Why? Because their lies served a greater purpose. They lied not for personal gain, but to protect something larger than themselves. Here's a question for you. If the lie serves a noble cause, is it still a lie? Or does it become something else, an act of leadership, a strategic necessity? And if we condemn all lies equally, do we risk demanding a kind of moral purity that no real-world leadership can sustain? This is the heart of Machiavelli's insight. He didn't admire cruelty or deception for their own sake. He recognized the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. And in this world, power is not granted to the most virtuous, it is claimed by the most effective. The leader who survives is the one who knows how to inspire trust, even when trust must be earned through illusion. That's not evil. That's survival. Because the world does not reward good intentions, it rewards results. But there's another layer to this. Deception is not just about lying to others. It's also about managing the self. A great leader must be able to suppress their own doubts, weaknesses, and confusion. They must project strength even when they feel none. That, too, is a kind of deception, and perhaps the most difficult kind, because it requires not just masking the truth but becoming the mask. So what does this mean for you, not as a ruler, but as a human being navigating a world where perception often outweighs reality? It means that part of maturity is understanding when truth serves and when it wounds. It means recognizing that wisdom doesn't always speak in absolutes. And it means asking yourself, in moments of great pressure, what matters more right now, being right or being effective? The anatomy of power is not pretty. It is made of ambition, vision, and yes, deception. But if we see that clearly, maybe we can stop pretending that the world runs on honesty alone. Maybe we can start asking deeper questions about what kind of leaders we really want and what it truly takes to become one. The moral mirror. When lies reflect a greater truth, let's take a breath. So far, we've explored the uncomfortable reality that deception is often woven into the very fabric of leadership. But now we face a deeper, more paradoxical insight. There are lies that serve truth better than honesty ever could. This is the moral mirror. The idea that sometimes, when a lie is told with wisdom, it reflects something more profoundly true than any literal fact. And this is where philosophy collides with leadership, ethics, and human psychology in the most profound way possible. See, we tend to think of morality in binaries. Truth is good, lies are bad, but real life is not a moral equation, it's a moral ecosystem. And ecosystems are messy. They're full of contradictions, sacrifices, and trade-offs. What Machiavelli understood, and what most people are still afraid to admit, is that great leadership often requires stepping outside the rigid boundaries of conventional morality, not to abandon ethics, but to serve them on a higher, more complex level. Let's consider a question that doesn't have an easy answer. Is it more moral to preserve peace through illusion, or to destabilize society with unpleasant truths? Imagine a leader who convinces two warring factions that they've reached a compromise, even if, behind the scenes, the terms aren't fully equal. If both sides accept the outcome and war is avoided, was that leader wrong to deceive them? Or was that lie a mirror showing people not the harsh, divisive truth, but the possibility of unity they weren't yet ready to believe in? This is what I mean by lies that reflect a greater truth. The idea that sometimes deception is a bridge across a chasm that pure honesty can't cross. And often, those who walk that bridge are not villains, they're visionaries. They see a future that doesn't yet exist, and to help others believe in it, they must speak as if it already does. Think about the great myths and symbols that have shaped civilizations. Were they all literally true? Of course not. But did they carry truths about human nature, courage, sacrifice, love, and justice? Absolutely. These stories, whether religious, national, or cultural, aren't lies in the shallow sense. They are metaphorical truths, and their power lies precisely in their ability to transcend facts. A leader who understands this doesn't merely manipulate, they inspire. They use narrative, yes, sometimes even illusion, not to mislead, but to elevate. This is the space where the philosopher and the politician meet. The philosopher seeks truth. The politician seeks order. But the great leader, the rare one, seeks both and knows when to prioritize one over the other. And that discernment is not about cleverness, it's about wisdom. Because there's a thin line between a lie that holds a people together and a lie that leads them into tyranny. Machiavelli knew this too. He never said that lying was good, only that it was sometimes necessary. And the difference between necessary and evil lies in the intention behind it. So, let's not romanticize lying. Let's not pretend that all deception is noble. Most lies are selfish, most are cowardly. But some are courageous. Some are told in moments of great moral clarity, where the choice is no longer between truth and lie, but between chaos and cohesion. And in those moments, the lie becomes a tool not of manipulation, but of stewardship. Now let's turn the lens on ourselves. What lies do we live with? What illusions do we maintain, not just in politics, but in our personal lives, to keep our families functioning, our relationships stable, our identities intact? Think about how often we tell ourselves things we know aren't fully true just to make it through the day. I'm fine. Everything will work out. They didn't mean to hurt me. These aren't malicious lies. They're emotional scaffolding. They hold us up when the full weight of truth would crush us. So why would we expect our leaders to exist beyond this human tendency? The idea that leaders must be perfect truth tellers is not only naive, it's inhuman. But leaders must be human, just like us. But with a higher burden, they must lie, not to protect themselves, but to protect us. And when they do it well, when they lie with purpose, with restraint, and with vision, those lies don't shatter morality. They reflect it in a more complex, more mature form. Ask yourself this: would you rather live under a leader who tells you the truth and lets the world burn, or one who lies just enough to buy time to save it? And more importantly, which kind of leader would you be if the responsibility fell on your shoulders? The moral mirror doesn't show us who we want to be. It shows us who we need to be when the stakes are high. And sometimes, in that reflection, we find a truth far deeper than honesty, the truth of intention, the truth of sacrifice, the truth of doing what must be done not for ego, but for the greater good. The final test: can you bear the weight of the lie? So now we arrive at the edge of the abyss, the final question that separates the ordinary from the exceptional, the crowd from the leader, the comfortable from the courageous. Knowing everything we've discussed, understanding how lies can preserve nations, protect people, and reflect deeper truths, ask yourself, could you do it? Could you carry the burden of a lie, not for your benefit, but for the survival of others? Because that is the weight of leadership. It is not just about making decisions, it's about making decisions that others will never fully understand, and then living with the silence that follows. It's about bearing the unseen consequences, knowing that the people you protect may one day judge you harshly without ever knowing the full story. Could you still lie, knowing that history might call you a tyrant, even though your deception prevented war? Could you hold the line, knowing the truth, but choosing not to speak it for now because timing is everything? Machiavelli's brilliance wasn't in his cynicism, but his clarity. He stripped away the illusions we like to wrap around politics and power. He didn't believe that all leaders must lie. He believed that all leaders will face moments where truth, if spoken too soon or too bluntly, will destroy more than it heals. And in those moments, the question is not whether to lie, but whether you can bear the weight of the lie. Not everyone can. And that's why not everyone is meant to lead. Let me ask you something difficult. Have you ever told a painful truth that you regretted? Not because it was wrong, but because the person you told it to wasn't ready. We often think that telling the truth is an act of courage, and sometimes it is. But sometimes the greater courage is in holding your tongue, carrying the burden silently, and waiting until the moment is right. That's not cowardice, that's wisdom. That's restraint, and that's leadership. Now zoom out. Imagine you are responsible for millions. Every word you say shifts economies, moves armies, changes lives. But you can't afford to speak your truth impulsively. You must weigh every syllable. You must calculate. And here's what most people don't understand. The higher you rise, the more your truth becomes dangerous. Because truth is not neutral, it's a weapon, a trigger, a floodgate. And sometimes, keeping that gate closed a moment longer is the only way to prevent a flood. But here's the paradox. The more you lie for the right reasons, the lonelier you become. That's the real cost. Because you can't explain yourself. You can't confess. You can't unburden your soul. You must live with the lie, carry it like a secret flame, knowing it is burning you from the inside out. And you must still smile, still lead, still pretend you're fine. That is the final test. Not just whether you can lie, but whether you can suffer for it, in silence, for the sake of others. So here's the question I want to leave you with, the question that haunts every great leader, every Machiavellian prince, every moral philosopher who dares to step into the real world. Can you lie, not because it benefits you, but because the truth would destroy something sacred? And if you can lie, can you live with the truth of what that means about you? Because in the end, leadership is not about being good. It's about doing what is necessary. Sometimes that means standing alone. Sometimes that means being misunderstood. And sometimes, yes, sometimes that means choosing the lie that saves over the truth that ruins. That's not villainy. That's not weakness. That's power. And it's the kind of power that only those willing to walk through fire will ever understand. So ask yourself, if the fate of the world rested on your voice, could you lie? Or would you speak the truth and watch it burn? Thank you for watching.